This is a Shane Plays podcast extra. Content that was not recorded as part of the live Shane Plays radio show. Enjoy.
Shall we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Welcome to the Shane Plays special podcast. I'm, of course, Shane Stacks, your host of Shane Plays. This podcast is an excerpt of about an hour from my friend Dave Elswick's radio show. The Dave Elswick Show is on 96.5 FM, The Answer, out of Little Rock, Monday through Friday, 2 to 6 p.m. I'm very thankful to Dave for allowing me to push this out as a special podcast. I think the topic is important. And Dave's just a great guy in general, so thanks a lot, Dave. Anyway, he had comics artist Mitch Breitweiser, who did a lot of work for Marvel and also does some stuff for Image and is getting into some self-publishing. He had myself, then of course Dave as the host, Joshua Huffington, and my friend Bill Brackeen all kind of chimed in on the craziness that's been going on with Marvel Comics over the past few years. And also, of course, the X-Men Gold #1 thing was talked about as well, but mainly just in general, the ideology, the craziness, the disrespect to the characters, the social conditioning, if you will, that Marvel has engaged in. And to make things even worse, after we recorded this, Marvel came out about a week later and tripled down, if you will, on the Captain America as a Nazi thing by saying that originally the Nazis had won World War II, and then the Allies had gotten a Cosmic Cube and changed it so that the Allies won and Captain America was a good guy, and then all the recent Secret Empire Nazi Captain America stuff was actually the Cosmic Cube putting things back to the way they were originally. So they didn't just double down, they tripled down on that Captain America is secretly Hydra Nazi bad guy. So it's just more of this ridiculousness that isn't just about storytelling, but they're trying to, comment on, the alt-right movement and all this other stuff and co-opting beloved characters and icons to further, not just to sell comic books, but to further political and sociological agendas. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this. There's some great discussion in here, especially from Mitch, because Mitch, being a comic book professional, has some insight to how Marvel Comics works that, the rest of us didn't. So anyway, I hope you enjoy listening to this, and thanks again to Dave Elswick for giving me permission to push this out as a special podcast.
7 minutes after 5 on a Thursday, and I brought in part of the Geek Squad. I brought in a special guest to join my couple of members of the Geek Squad because we got a serious topic to talk about. Always remember that Breitbart said that, culture is upstream from politics. In other words, what happens in culture will make its way down into politics and will change politics as we know it. And we've seen this happen time and time again. Well, an area of culture that is being changed, I think literally as we speak and over the last few years, has been in the area of some of the comic books and some of the things that they have gotten involved in. For instance, Marvel, when they came on and started taking on DC Comics were all these bright-colored, superheroes and things, and then here came Marvel, and they had kind of the quote anti-hero superhero. Is that a right assessment?
Well, I would say DC had the godlike characters, and
Okay.
Marvel had more of these street level,
The demigods.
Yeah, they were like street level flawed people that were a little bit more relatable to the
Right.
common man. And
They were
that's
heroes
sort
or
of,
problems.
Okay. Oh, Bill Brackeen even's chiming in today. He's on by phone. Hi, Bill. Good to have you here. Yeah, we're talking about Marvel. Marvel has made a huge change. This is not the Marvel of Stan Lee any longer. This is Marvel unleashed to go a totally different way. Now, Mitch, you've been in this business for how long now?
like 11 or 12 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you?
It's changed a lot.
Has this
especially
happened during the time that you've been in the business?
Yeah, I think I was really fortunate to come in at a time when it was still a little bit like classic Marvel, right? I mean, we were just telling superhero stories, and I got to tell some really fun ones, that's for sure. But
Captain America, man.
Yeah, and I got some good ones. I really did. I'm very fortunate. But towards the end, basically towards the end of my Marvel career. That was like 2010-ish to 2013. Around those 3 years, there was a lot of changes being made. Disney purchased them for one.
Yeah.
Right. And
Stan Lee went goodbye.
Stan Lee left. I mean, he had exited. He had been gone for some time. Right. But they culturally left him behind, I think, in some ways. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know what you're saying.
There was some changes in the upper level management at the editorial.
Right.
When I was there, Joe Quesada was the editor-in-chief, and he came from an artist background, so he very much understood the importance of the art in the book and how the nature of the artists and why how to keep the artist happy, and thus, like, when you're keeping the artist happy, I think you're keeping fans happy. But there was definitely a change in leadership towards the end, and things got kind of hairy. My last couple of years, I don't talk about it much, but my last couple of years there were not very fun.
Well, I kind of understand why you don't talk about it, because I understand what happened to you here just recently,
right?
On the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I got Chuck Dixoned.
Yeah,
pretty much.
So let me ask you this, Mitch. I'm curious. When you were at Marvel, were you considered a freelance that got recurring work, or were you an employee of Marvel?
No, I was considered freelance, but for most of the time I was there, I was under what's called an exclusive contract. So it was like a non-compete.
Right.
But I was guaranteed work. But towards the end of that, I was getting the work, but like it was like, I'd get a book for a month and then I'd be pulled off of it. Another artist would come on. It was basically like fill-ins all the time. And a lot of artists, good artists, veteran artists, were having the exact same experience. And there was just this general crack up, especially amongst the art talent, like quality art talent, that just said, man, this is not a place to be. They started double shipping books. And around this time, my wife was working at Marvel as a colorist.
Now, double ship, does that mean twice a month?
Twice a month,
okay.
Yeah. And that just blew everything up, because when they changed the upper level editorial stuff, it became about, shipping more, getting more books out there, rather than, let's keep this artist and this writer together and have them do a run so that people can really absorb it.
Well,
because
right.
As an artist, especially as an artist, it takes more than an issue to get your legs on a project. I mean, if you're just thrown onto something, it is very, very difficult to get a grasp of the new world you're drawing, the new characters you're drawing. But man, they just treated, I don't know, maybe that wouldn't for everybody, but I know it was widespread, but they were just treating us like little pegs you could just put in any different book at any given time. And it made a lot of people very unhappy, including me.
For my listeners, explain to them how a comic comes together. I mean, there's the story, then there's the artwork, and you've got to be able to meld both of those together.
And it starts really with, at least for the last 15 years or so, as I understand it, as I know, it starts in these sort of like writers'
Summits.
weekends.
Yeah, they do these like summit kind of things.
The Writers' Summit, yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah, where all the major writers who are all very, very left wing, right? It's not a diverse group of people in terms of ideologically or whatever. So they have these writers' summits, and they lay out the universe for the next year or so. So it starts there, and then each writer is sort of handed off a different area of the universe or whatever, and then they write the scripts, and then artists are hired to finish them out.
Okay, so when these writers get together at these summits or whatever, do you believe that they're sitting down and saying, hey, look at what's happening in culture. How can we either help certain things along, or how can we say things that will hinder things?
I don't think it started that way, right? I mean, I really don't think it started that way. I mean, I think the social media stuff and the change in political climate under the last administration, things changed big time. People had to. I think in the beginning it was more like, let's make great comics, right? And that's how it was when I was there. And just like, I mean, comics always had a message, and some of it was a little bit political, even back in the Stan Lee days, right? I mean, that's not deniable.
Look, Captain America was beating the crap
Right.
out of the Nazis.
Yeah,
Well, he
something we
also,
can all
at
get
one
behind,
time,
right?
Captain America gave up being, he became nomad because, and then you had the classic Green Lantern, Green Arrow, where they were trying to find America and all this stuff. But here's what has happened recently in mainstream comics. Now, underground comics has always been subversive as heck, but mainstream comics, especially Marvel, now all the mainstream publishers can take their lumps here, but Marvel as a whole has gone way off the rails, and they've gone from social commentary, which comics have always done social commentary.
Okay.
And now they're engaging in social conditioning.
Social engineering?
Right. They're trying to wag the dog instead of letting the dog wag the tail. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying.
So let me give you just a
They're
quick.
trying to elicit
Yeah.
the change instead of talking about the
Well,
change.
let me give. There's this guy, and Mitch can speak personal knowledge of him. When they pulled what they pulled with Captain America about a year ago, where they basically said he was a Nazi, right before Memorial Day weekend, and just a few months before that, they had Iceman, Bobby Drake's always been established to be like women and all that. Suddenly he's gay, so they started co-opting characters to make a statement. I said, what is going on here? So, I started doing some research, and here is like some quotes from Axel Alonso, who's basically the editor-in-chief of what is his title? Mitch?
Editor-in-chief.
Yeah. So
Very good. You got it right, Shane.
traditionally, writing comics has been a hobby for white guys. So this is how he's approaching it right off the bat.
Wow.
This,
I thought it
it's
was
just
an
a
art
hobby.
form.
It's just a hobby for white guys, implying A, not that serious, and B, well, they're white guys, so they can't possibly cover what America needs to have covered. Now, in a very short amount of time, now we have two Spider-Men, one of which is a biracial kid named Miles Morales, who I happen to like Miles Morales in his own universe, but now they've smushed. Now you got two Spider-Men in the same universe. Thor is a white woman. One of the Captain America is a black man. The other one is now an agent of the right-wing group Hydra, which is basically the Nazis. So the white guy is the Nazis. Miss Marvel is a Pakistani Muslim American, and Hulk is a Korean kid.
Yeah.
All within like a year or two.
And
That's kind of crazy.
Well, they're trying to.
You forgot about Wolverine.
Well, Wolverine's dead.
Wolverine's a female now. It's X-23.
Well, his daughter, right? Yeah, it's his daughter. The point is, and here's my thing. I don't mind if they want to represent American culture in comics, but create characters that stand on their own. Don't co-opt characters that people have had beloved relationships with for 40, 50 years.
Man, I had this exact same conversation with somebody who was trying to tell me, how's the guy pronounce his name? Ibris is a black actor, great black actor.
You're talking about Ibris.
Ibris Alba.
Yeah.
And they said, let's make him the next James Bond. And I go, no. James Bond, as conceived, is a white British spy
Yeah.
who is as misogynist as they come
Right.
and can vanquish anybody.
Right.
You beat him to death and he's like a Timex. He just keeps on ticking. I don't see movies as some way of saying, well, look, anybody can be this. Well, take him and I'm trying to think of the character that the guy out of Atlanta that does all the Madeira movies.
Tyler Perry.
And yeah, he's got Alex? It's not Alex Jones. No, Alex Jones is talk show host. But there's one that
It's on the tip of my tongue. I know what you're going
Yeah.
with.
Are you basically saying if you want a cool black secret agent, come
Yeah.
up with a cool black secret
like
agent character?
come up
Right.
with John Shaft.
Right.
I understand. I have no problem with that.
Well, there's room for new cool secret agents. I mean, Jack Reacher's doing very well.
Yeah.
And he's not James Bond, but he's that kind of, secret. And that's the thing. What I saw with what
Alex
they did.
Alex Cross, thank you.
What I saw what they did with Bobby Drake, Iceman, who's been a core Marvel character of the original X-Men since the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly he's gay. Now, somebody out there's going, what's wrong with that? If you want to come up with a cool gay character and put him in comic books, go for it. don't hollow out the existing
Yeah, you don't
character
destroy the canon.
and shove your hand up their butt and
what-
make their mouth move
Is that
like a puppet.
I guess that's what we said. Don't destroy the canon.
Well, what really bothers me about the strategy, and this is a marketing strategy, I think, more than anything else. They're hoping for, like, they do these things so they can get in mainstream news and get a little blip on the radar and drive some sales. And then almost always when they do this, the books tail off really quickly and are almost always canceled. But what really, really bothers me is they do these types of what I call forced patronizing diversity campaigns. Like this, it's not. Marvel's always been a diverse world, always.
Sure.
I mean, when a kid growing up in
Luke Cage.
Arkansas, it was a whole nother world of all kinds of different characters from different backgrounds. Marvel has never had a problem with diversity. In my opinion,
I agree.
So
with
they
that.
do this stuff as a cheap marketing ploy, and what's really gets me is that they know somebody's going to go and say, I don't like that. Like, that bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
And that person, is likely to be a white guy because that's the primary readership. And when that person comes out and says that, they point and say, look at that guy.
Yeah.
That is a racist, sexist, homophobe, whatever. So they're basically taking all their fans and put, like, a majority of their fans, and putting them in catch-22s. That's an uncomfortable position to be in. So everybody's thinking the same thing and not able to say it, because when you do say it, everybody, on Twitter or Marvel, whatever,
right.
will jump right down your throat. Look at that bigot.
You're an overprivileged white guy. There's no possible way you can understand
And I've been called
anything.
that. Over the last 6 months, I have been called that so many times for the first time ever. In my
White
life.
privilege.
It is bizarre.
White privilege.
It is absolutely bizarre.
That's because there's insanity going on. Here's another good example.
All right, hey, hold on.
Yeah, we gotta
hey,
get-
Bill, I'm going
yeah.
to get you in here. All right, we haven't forgot about you. Hang in
Oh,
there. I
poor
know
Bill, yeah,
your ear is probably going numb. But go ahead.
Yeah.
real quick.
Here's a perfect example. Captain America is not just a comic book character. He's become a cultural patriotic icon, right? Of soldiers and the military and the American this.
He's our
And
Apollo.
He always does the right thing. I had a guy on my show named Nick Cochran right after they pulled this stunt with him suddenly being a Nazi. And man, this guy loved Captain America, loves everything about has a ring with the Captain America symbol in it. So this is just deeper than just, we're telling an interesting comic book story. No, you're pooping all over
I've
an
got
ideal
Captain
here.
America is in my studio. I mean, come on. He stands for what America is.
All right, I'm going to turn my mic off so Bill can talk.
Okay, Bill, if you'll hold, when I come back, I'm going to turn it over to you, okay?
Okay.
All right, and see what you have to say about this. Mitch Breitweiser is in the studio. He is our special guest. Josh is here. Shane is here. Bill is here. And I'm here. You'll hear me once in a while here on the Dave Elswick Show. But all right, Bill Brackeen, what is your thoughts about what you're hearing us talk about?
Well, the amazing thing to me about some of this, as Mitch kind of mentioned earlier, Marvel has always had a history of having a very diverse pantheon of characters, and where it kind of baffles me that they've done this before and done it right, as opposed to the way they're doing it now. And when they did it right, it was their most successful comic ever when they revamped the X-Men in the 70s. And they had a very diverse cast of characters. Most of them were original. And it was very popular. And it outsold everything else on the market. And now they're doing, as has been observed, kind of these shoehorned, forced versions. And you do have to kind of have a balance when you're one of these big companies producing these monthly comics, because, you've got to put something in the book every month, and you've got to have something to have people come back every month. And of course, the best formula for that is to tell good, entertaining stories. But even if you're doing that, occasionally the readership will wane. And so back in the 90s, they started doing all these stunts on a regular basis. They had the death of Superman, and this was primarily DC comics. I'm going to mention here.
I need you to hold your thought. We'll come back and I'll let you finish. But as you know, I run on a strict time frame here, and I do have hard breaks, and one of those is coming up right now. We got to get Fox News in, find out what's going on in the world, and then we'll be back and talk further with you about this, and Mitch, and Shane, and Josh, because Josh is here as well on the Dave Elswick Show. Bill Brackeen was in the midst of explaining what he was thinking about all of this when I had to cut him off. I will now unleash him again upon you. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. Well, just to recap, Marvel did this much more successfully back in the 70s when they were creating original diverse characters as part of the X-Men, and later, as they expanded that with a book called The New Mutants, and they had African-American characters and Native American characters and characters of different nationalities, and it was all very natural and unforced, and it was the biggest selling comic that Marvel ever had. And now it seems like they're shoehorning it all in and force-feeding it to people. Now, I did see an article recently where Marvel has stated they're going to stop doing this. They're going to have less emphasis on political stories, and they're going to try to go back to just doing straight superhero stories. But I don't know that anything that they've changed is going to change back. They seem to be having an issue because nobody's buying the comics that they're doing under this program where they're trying to be more racially and socially diverse.
Well, it's not just diverse; they're also trying to.
They're activists.
There's an agenda
It's
beyond.
agenda-driven,
Yeah, it's also,
Yeah.
but.
And they've said that they're going to end. They're going to stop doing that.
Well, Bill, to back up what you're saying, there's Marvel VP of Sales David Gabriel, and this is a ICV2.com really kind of fanned the flames on this a couple of weeks ago. There was a retailer summit. Is this what you're talking about, Bill? Where he said, and they've missed the point.
Yes,
they have missed the point. Let me read you the quote. So ICV2.com was allowed to set in on this retailer summit, and they did some blog posts or articles or whatever. And what David Gabriel, who's the VP of sales, and this is going to back up what Bill's saying, he said, what we heard was that people didn't want any more diversity. That's not what people are saying.
Now, that's not what they're saying, but that's proven in the 70s.
Right. They're missing the point. They didn't want female characters out there. That's not true. Okay. What people are reacting to is the underlying agenda that you're shoving in the midst of it. Right.
Okay. So Mitch has more on that part of it.
Well, on the subtext of that retail summit, if you go on to read further a little bit down what that Gabriel says, he says, basically, we've been producing great content. So basically, he says our stuff is brilliant. It's the fans, and he blames the fans for not accepting their brilliant
Not accepting
work.
how brilliant it is.
And that is like beyond bizarre.
Joshua, what do you think about all this?
I think they're crazy.
Well, there it goes. Summed up nicely.
He cut
one word.
through all the crap, man.
Because it's
Boom.
like, for
Done.
me, I wouldn't say a perfectionist, completionist. I mean, if I'm getting these books, I don't want to stop. It's like, it gets me stuck because I'm like, I don't want to miss it.
They're even turning the junkies away.
Let me
Right.
tell you, I haven't bought a Marvel comic since the Captain America thing, and I don't miss them one.
I haven't bought one since
I'm just fine.
yesterday.
Better yet, I have friends. I have more than a few friends that are in our age group, right, 35 to 45, with kids.
I appreciate you keeping me in that age group.
Well, with kids with six-figure incomes and beyond, like owners of companies that would spend, and I know this. They used to spend hundreds of dollars on comic books every week.
Wow.
Because it was a habit they formed when they were kids, and they want to keep it going and keep the arts alive. That stopped. Like more than a few.
Mm-hmm.
That is not, and that's not going to hurt Marvel, right? Marvel doesn't really need their money. They probably don't even want their money, it seems like.
Yeah, that part
hurts
of
the
Disney
talent
now.
It hurts the retailers, and it hurts the fans, and it's like they don't even care. But those guys that spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, they're vanishing by the day.
Yeah. Well, I just as kind of, and I've been told this by people who've worked at DC and Marvel. primarily they see the comic books as a loss leader. They don't really, I mean, they would like it if they would support themselves financially, but they don't really need them to. They're just a feeder to make movies and cartoons and action figures and lunchboxes and underwear.
But here's the key, Bill, and see if you agree with me. If they're willing to change the comics, how long before this ideology filters into the movies? And when it filters into the movies, they're going to kill the movies as well.
Too much money is at stake. I don't think they will.
You don't think they will?
I mean, they do it with the comics because they can afford to.
The thing is that, and that's short-sighted, because comic books could be a moneymaker again. First of all, I think they're pricing themselves out of business. I mean, a comic book is $4 or $5 now. That's, in my opinion, ridiculous. But D&D and tabletop role-playing games, which have nothing to do with computers or the TV or the internet, is selling as much now as it ever was in the 70s or the 80s. And so it was showing that kind of entertainment and content can still be a big seller. That's kind of short-sighted.
Okay, I got a caller.
Yeah.
Charles is in Austin. Charles, how are you? Welcome to the Dave Elswick Show. What's your thoughts on this?
Hey, Big Dave. I'm a nerd. I'm 60 years old this coming November.
I'm 64, brother. Go ahead.
I hear you. I used to call you a lot back in the day when you were on a different station, but this was much better.
Thank you.
And I've been collecting comics since I was a kid. I have a personal collection of over 25,000 comics. And you're absolutely right about Marvel. You know, my question is, you're absolutely right about what they're doing. I'm like the gentleman who was just talking. I haven't bought much Marvel since the Captain America Bucky Winter Storm saga. I haven't missed it at all. What I want to know is, where's the new Spider-Man? Where's the new Daredevil? Where's the new Iron Man? Where are the new characters to create new mythology and new stories? They can't keep relaunching and making number ones over and over and over and bring in the kids and make new 60-year-old comic book collectors. And I'll shut up and listen.
All right. Thanks.
Well,
Appreciate your
I'm
call.
working on these problems on my own outside of Marvel, and I'm not the only one. There are a lot of there is a desire, a public desire. There is a market need that's not being satiated, and myself and a lot of other creators also see this need. Eventually, we're going to fill that market with comic books that are more priced like a candy bar and a Coke, and content that is, that is new and fresh. I mean, I am working to solve your problem.
I'm just thinking, can you come up like with Millennial Man, who
he can have a safe space whenever he needs it?
Yeah, his feelings get hurt. All the time. Or something like that.
He has the ultimate slap.
He can create instant safe spaces.
Power.
And he runs around in PJs and drinking hot cocoa.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And handing out puppy dogs and coloring books.
Well, here's the thing, though. That your caller, Charles, had a point. These huge mythical characters are coming along less and less. One is because, like was pointed out by Bill, they're focusing more on the movies and this and that and the other, rather than trying to have a vigorous comic book industry. But the last major character that has become a pop culture mythological character that I could think of is Harley Quinn. And that's been over the past 10 or 20 years.
That's pretty cool.
I can't think of another character.
Because I like Harley Quinn.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is I can't think of another character that has come along that has gotten the cachet or whatever. So he's right. Where are the new ones?
I think
where have you gone?
There's this guy I know that brings steampunk stuff into his comic books and things of that nature.
He's almost a futurist.
I think that he's got some really good ideas if somebody would just help back him up with some money. Because that's the key.
Cents.
The key is greenbacks, folks. Just to be honest.
Yeah, I tell you what, though. I mean, I know there's a lot of talent that is going misused, underused in this business. Towards the end of my career, they were, comics has always been an American export to the world. It's one of our cultural exports. But in recent years, they import a lot of talent right from overseas, which is fine.
And we're
a
going
lot
to
of
talk
brilliant
about
people
some of that talent
have
in a
come
moment.
through. And I'm getting to my point. there is a lot of underused and misused talent in this country where you could make comics great again in the United States with U.S. talent, and it's serious talent. And it is literally just a matter of somebody coming in with a vision and a few bags of money maybe,
somebody
and organizing the next Marvel.
Yeah,
It could
somebody
happen.
to jump in and get involved with it. Yeah,
And this is
money-wise.
This is a tangent we can't go down with the time we have, but I lay some of this at the feet of Diamond
Yes.
because we're getting into the weeds here. This is how
Right.
comics are distributed.
And
Dave,
destroyed.
Josh, Mitch, Bill, remember how you could go into any convenience store, any grocery store, and get a
Walmart
comic
even.
book.
Well,
Walmart,
there
the
used to
grocery
be. It
stores?
used to be
spinner racks.
You walk in. Just a spinner rack would be in. If you stopped and got gas and walked into
Yeah.
the gas station to buy a candy bar, they had a spinner rack. there.
Right. So you got to get the prices down, and you got to get, because Diamond, this distributor company, has got a chokehold, and it's basically just comic book stores now.
Yeah, and you have to, and comic book stores are almost all. I mean, they're almost always in cosmopolitan urban markets, right? We're fortunate to have kind of 3 or maybe 4 comic book stores around Little Rock, but there is no comic book store in Lufkin, Texas, or Sheridan, Arkansas, or wherever, right? I mean, these kids don't have. They don't
really
have
hurt
that
them when the
bit of our
Hastings
culture
closed
anymore.
down.
It is they just have upped and left them behind.
Yeah, because I used to pick up a comic book and then order my X-ray specs out of the back.
I used to go to
Yeah.
the shopette on Little Rock Air Force Base to get my comics. And in 7th grade, I heard of this thing called a comic book store. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
I have a story about that. I have a buddy who worked for Marvel who was chased out of the business because he had the wrong political views. But he was writing Punisher and a few other spy type books. He, on his own, arranged a deal for the Air Force bases and a lot of these bases to start
them in
carrying
the BX and stuff.
these sort of more military, especially the more military-based Marvel books. And he spent political capital to make it happen and put it in Marvel's lap, and they just walked away.
why would you do
Just
that?
walked
Why would you
away.
do that?
They didn't want their business. They don't want the kid in Arkadelphia's business. They don't want the kid in Lufkin, Texas businesses anymore. It bothers me to no end, and it's a problem that I chew on almost every day, and I'm going to solve it.
All right, taking a break. We'll be back with more. All right, we just got a few minutes left. I wanted to cover some more stories here on this whole Marvel thing. Josh, you bring us up to date on this gold comic that you have, and then Mitch, your thoughts about it, and your thoughts about it too, Shane. All right, here we go. Go ahead, Josh.
So basically, probably Marvel's biggest X-Men book since X-Men #1 from 1992 comes out. It's almost like their thing with Disney. You would say almost okay, X-Men are still here. We don't hate X-Men. Here they are. They're going back to their roots and everything. And they bring in this artist from Indonesia who does the book. Everything's all done. They kind of pulled, to me, my weird analogy is, you remember you went and saw the second Matrix in the theater? You
Yep.
loved it. You went and saw the third Matrix in the theater? And then you think about the second one, and then you don't like the second one as much. Well, they hire what they call a superstar artist from Indonesia, and everything's great. I read it myself, didn't see any problems, didn't yet, until the weekend. Then I saw this kid made some Facebook post, like a open forum for Marvel, open letter. And I was just like, oh, great, here we go. Somebody didn't like something about X-Men. And then I started reading it, and I was like,
This is
Huh.
legit.
yeah. And I started thinking, so basically, how do you put it? He was like a super conservative Islamic artist who had snuck all these anti-Christian and anti-Semitic messages throughout the book and kind of just played with it. Didn't think anybody would
And
notice.
that's confirmed now.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah.
confirmed.
Yeah. I mean,
he even
people-
said it. The
Yeah.
guy who did it said, yeah, I did it. I did it on purpose.
So, like,
Yeah.
one of the main
He
ones
doubled down on it.
yeah.
is Kitty Pryde. They made Kitty Pryde the leader of the team, who is, everyone has known her. She's like Marvel's big Jewish character. And right above her shoulder, it says jewelry store, just jewelry, really big. And then on the same page, someone on the sign, you see 212, which everybody at first thought it was New York's area code since it's in New York, but it turns out it was from the big protest in Indonesia on December 2nd last year, because their president is was a Chinese Christian in Indonesia, and he was part of the protest too. And then in the next page, they're playing softball, and Colossus has a message from the Quran on his shirt. Which to me, when I first saw that, I passed by it. Even the second time I read it, I was thinking it was like a just random numbers and letters on his jersey, like you'd find at Walmart or somewhere. But it turns out that's actual Quran scripture about the
it says don't have a non-Muslim leader.
And it said how Muslims should not get along with the Jews and the Christians because they are your enemy. And then you've had people come out of the woodwork, try to defend it, say, well, in Indonesia it actually translates to this. But it's like, who cares what it translates to? This is the X-Men. This was the wrong book. I mean, it shouldn't even been in a book at all. And then you have on the next page when they're playing Nightcrawler, the Catholic priest of the X-Men, it makes it look like he's hitting Kitty upside the head with the bat.
All right, so Marvel reacted, fired this guy as an artist. Sounds like they're doing the right thing, but Mitch, you question it.
I don't question. I mean, I think it's the right call to pull the book and to fire the artist. But I think,
why did it even happen? Right?
Why did it happen in the first place? Shane and I were talking about this in the break, and there are good and bad things out of this. But Marvel, for many, many years, has been sending their talent coordinator overseas to hunt for talent. And there is great talent to be found. I mean, there are some incredible draftsmen, but, a lot of times these people don't know our culture. They don't know what it's like to be an American kid in Wichita, Kansas. They don't. They can't speak to that person at all. They don't understand that person's cultural references, how they receive and perceive storytelling. It's the West is. In America in particular, is very, very unique. And for a long time, comics were globally considered an amazing American cultural export.
Like rock and roll.
Yeah, it's like rock and roll.
The only two art forms I think there is jazz and comic books, right? Isn't that some of the only two unique American
rock
art
and roll?
It is a unique form of American expression, and we tell stories a certain way. And I don't have any problem with other, talent coming in from overseas or whatever, because some of it, like I said, is phenomenal. But we have amazing talent right here, made in the USA, born in the USA, that grew up right around here, that knows how to speak to the kids in Wichita, Kansas. I'll just use that as an example. And I think Marvel, by doing what they've done, not only do they, little inside baseball, rates go lower and lower and lower, because foreign talent will work for cheaper, and that's just economics.
Sounds like the IT field.
Yeah. So the rates get lower and lower and lower, and the guy who's been drawing comics for 25 years with 2 kids in college is now a very, very unhappy person because
kicked to the curb.
Yeah, and I've seen it happen, and I've heard some sad stories.
All right.
So that's my
I got about a minute. Your thought. You had something you wanted to say about
Well, no, I think that one thing I want to clarify, I'm very upset with Marvel right now, and I have been for a while.
Yeah, you came on my show when this happened.
Yeah, I went berserk over the Captain America thing. This one I don't lay at their feet, right? Now, maybe their methods of hiring or this or that or whatever led to it, but I will give them credit where credit's due. When it came to light and it was verified, they took action. And also the writer, I don't think had anything to do with this. I think the artist on their own inserted a lot of stuff into the background.
The writer's the same writer as for Arrow.
Right.
This TV show.
So I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So the other thing is we've been beating on Marvel, and they're the biggest offender right now, but all of the comic book companies are doing it to some level or another. But Marvel's just gone cuckoo.
All right. So we'll wrap it up right there. Mitch, I want to say thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to have you in more often, not just as the geek, but we bring you in on the power panel.
Yeah, I'd love to.
It'll be a lot of fun. All right. Shane Stacks, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Here's Shane every Saturday, 1 o'clock, right here. Well, is it 1 o'clock, right?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Shane Plays Radio. 96.5 FM. And, of course, Josh, thank you as well. Bill Brackeen, if you're listening, thanks as well.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.